I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors, and you're listening to the Double Clutch Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch NBA Podcast. I'm your usual host, Matthew Wellington. I'm joined tonight once again by Mike Miller.
Hello.
Been a while.
For you.
For me.
No, has it? I don't know. We weren't on last week's one, but I'm sure we were on the week before.
Joe and Jamie did the last one.
Yeah.
Hugh did the one in between that because now we've got a WNBA podcast, so it gets a little bit confusing.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. So maybe there has been a few. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. But anyway, please go check out the fantastic WNBA podcast, which Hugh Hopkins put out last week, where he interviewed LA Sparks' Carly Samuelson on all kinds of things, from Brianna Stewart's injury to Liz Cambridge's reported trade rumors. It was a really great 25 minutes just going around the WNBA. Hugh's rolling into form with that as we roll towards the season. I believe that's shown on Sky Sports this year as well. So when you're out of NBA and you need more NBA, you can put the women's NBA on, which is a great thing. But yeah, we're doing our best to cover a sport that probably safe in saying it's not covered in the UK at all.
Well, the NBA is barely covered in the UK.
Well,
WNBA
true.
But that will be changing. Sky Sports obviously picked it up, which is great.
Yeah.
And Hugh will be picking it up this end as well. There's some plans for more WNBA content. Basketball never stops.
Basketball does never stop, and we are in the midst of the playoffs. Just in case you didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. One of the US shows I was watching earlier on was saying how disappointed they've been with the first round, but I don't really get where they're coming from. I've quite enjoyed the first round so far. We've had some nice memorable moments already.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of sort of contentious matchups, whereas we sort of have this perception now that everyone's pally and it's a mates league and there's no rivalries anymore. And I'm pretty sure if there are some rivalries that have started, if they weren't already there. There's been some really kind of confrontational situations, which I think is great. It's all nice, healthy competition. Love it.
Yeah,
unless you're Jared Dudley.
Yeah, and Jared Dudley. Yeah, turning around and doing the gladiator. Are you not entertained? And then Ben Simmons goes down the other end, dunks all over the place. Amazing. Simmons is having a phenomenal series as well. I saw Tom Reed, who used to do Believe the Hype podcast down in Australia. He's over in the States now, and he was posting the highlights of the games. I think he's just been following the Australian players around the league since he got there, which is a pretty cool thing to do. Like, you go from, being a podcaster like we are to like following Australia's young talent around in the postseason, which is a pretty cool thing to do. It's just a shame we've not got anyone we can follow, really. OG's not playing though, man.
Yeah, I know, but he's still there.
He's still there.
Still in the league.
But I don't want to go
back
over there and not watch him play.
Watch him in his street clothes.
Yeah, okay. Sitting in the locker room at the Scotiabank Arena or whatever the hell it is they call it now.
Fair point. I'll concede on that one.
We've had some crazy moments. I mean, James Harden went 0 of 15 for the first half the other night in a game which the Jazz, I don't know how they lost it. I posted about it in the Agony and the Ecstasy, which is the sort of playoff recap series we've been doing on doubleclutch.uk, but I've never seen a more demoralising postseason defeat. They did everything they possibly could to win that game. Donovan Mitchell was unbelievable, missed a shot to sort of win the game and tie it at the end, but he's 21. It's his second year in the league. His time will come, man. It's just going to take a little bit longer. And Gordon Hayward was fantastic on Sunday night. It was Sunday night. The bank holiday weekend's proper screwed my head this week. I don't know about you, but
oh yeah, totally. I've got no idea what day it is. I have no idea what's going on. I've been knackered. It feels like for about 2 weeks now. It's just bizarre.
I had a great time Sunday night because I went out to watch the basketball with some of my friends in Norwich, which because I've told you a million times, is very difficult for me to do because I don't have any NBA friends here. And I managed to sit them all down in front of Sky Sports, grab a big Nando's takeaway, some beers, and we watched the Pacers and the Celtics, and then the Warriors and the Clippers, and they were all really entertaining games. It's quite interesting seeing the contrast in the sort of the casual NBA fan. I did a little bit of history where we went through YouTube and looked at Malice in the Palace because they were asking about fights.
I like that. Yeah, Do they fight? Is that what they come in asking? It's like, this is basketball. Do they fight?
One of the questions was, do they actually have a proper fight? And I was like, well, let's look at Malice in the Palace, and we got it up on YouTube. And
what motivated that question? I don't get that. Like, oh right, so there's guys running around with a ball. Do they fight?
I think it might have been. There might have been a little scuff in the Pacers game where I think that might have been it, but yeah, there was some catalyst that ended up with us watching Malice in the Palace, which was an interesting turn. But yeah, when the Clippers and Warriors game came on, it was like they were, their casual fandom went to a whole nother level as they watched Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Durant do what they do. It's quite amazing to see the impact they have on just people who don't really follow basketball. Like, I think it's because it's so effortless and amazing. But
what sort of reactions did it get? Like, do they appreciate it to the level
they appreciate it? I don't think it's probably to the level that we do, but they certainly were appreciating what was going on in that game a lot more than they were in the Celtics Pacers game.
That's cool. That's good to hear. There you go, converting Norwich 3 people at a time.
Yeah, apart from the Miles Turner poster of Gordon Hayward.
Oh my gosh,
that was a pretty good moment.
Wow,
that got them excited.
I'm trying to think what I was doing at that time, but I'm pretty sure I had something in my hand and it wasn't in my hand by the time I'd finished reacting.
Yeah.
I think it might have been a bowl of cereal or something like that, as you casually do on a Sunday evening.
Well, that was a rebuff of Gordon Hayward, really. I mean, he's the 6th highest paid player in the league this season. I mean, he comes out in that game, has 20 points, 77% shooting from the field, 100% from downtown.
I said to you on Slack, I can't believe you didn't reference in your article the resurrection being Easter Sunday. Because, I mean, he was crucified by Miles Turner, and then he came storming back. So,
well, you're a lot smarter than me. I never claimed to be a whiz kid of these things, but I should have taken it and I should have ran with it. But yeah, we've had all these sort of fantastic moments so far, and then last night we had, well, one of the moments, I think, one of the all-time great NBA playoff moments. We had Damian Lillard scoring 50 points, knocking down 10 3-pointers, which was a career high for him. And
your days are blurring into one. That was two
nights ago. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's fine.
There you go. It's the hard grind of having to watch not having to watch, of choosing to watch the NBA and then function at sociable hours in the UK.
Yeah, it does feel like having to watch sometimes, but it's a playoff, so it's not really a laborious task like it is during a regular season. But
no,
yeah, career high night for him, franchise record night for him, which weirdly broke his own franchise record, but he doesn't shy away from the big time, and he's had big game winners before. Most notably 2014, where he took Portland through for the first time in, what was it, 19 years or something, that they'd gone through to the second round. But yeah, the other night against the Thunder, chance to win the series, scores all tied at the end. They've gone on a crazy 26-8 run to get back into that game, and he pulls up from 35, 36, 37, 40 feet, like nobody seems to really know. And nails a 3 over one of the elite perimeter defenders in the NBA in Paul George. It was one of those,
a defensive player of the year front runner. It was beautiful.
It was one of those get off your seat moments, and one of the 5 years down the line, you won't be forgetting that one. Like, this is, I think people have been saying all season long that Damian Lillard, we know he's been underrated. Everyone goes on about it every season. Mike Miller wrote Nick Whitfield. I don't know how I'm getting you two confused. Nick Whitfield wrote an article about how he was underrated last season, and it seems to be a regular recurring theme on our site, certainly, and around the NBA blogosphere. But this was his moment. Like, every player has to have that moment. Steph Curry had his moment against the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he hit that half-court heave in overtime to win that series. When was that? 2016.
Did that win the series? I don't recall it winning the series.
It might not.
I mean, and this is where recency bias comes in, because I remember that shot being amazing, but I don't remember it having the level of importance that this had. And I'm kind of just like, so I'm trying to rack my brains for specifically buzzer beaters that have had this level of importance.
Well, did it have such a high level of importance, or is it more the storylines that were built around this series? Because there's obviously people going on about it being like the greatest game winner of all time, but considering that
it knocked out a team that had swept them in the regular season.
Yeah, well, that's where the storyline is. It's the fact that they've been
the past 2 seasons' first round exits, including
where they were
what
awful.
Dame called himself on CJ's podcast today. I think he said it was embarrassing that they'd been exited the way they were last year in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I mean, the show we did a couple of weeks back with Jamie, Jamie was bang on the money. Lillard had something to prove, and he's bloody proved it.
He went and proved it. Yeah, last season was pretty embarrassing for him. He got shut down by Drew Holiday and Rajon Rondo in that series. He only had I think he averaged 18.5 points a game in that series. This year that went up to 33. And then when you look up his shooting percentage from shots beyond 30 plus feet, he was 8 of 12, which is 66-67%. It's just a remarkable leap, and it puts him in, well, it's like him and Steph Curry in the elite territory of being able to make that shot. And that's what makes the fact that Paul George, who was the guy he scored it over, like coming out in the post-game interview and saying it was a bad shot, just stinks so much. Like,
I get why he's saying it's a bad shot, because statistically in general that would be a bad shot. But
in the modern NBA, where three-pointer is the thing.
You've named 2 players out of 450 who can hit it.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of the general population of the NBA, it's a bad shot. But I get that there's some salt there, definitely some salt there. But I get why he's saying it's a bad shot, because less than 1% of the NBA makes that shot. But he should have been smart enough and aware enough to know that this guy is like part of that 1% who can.
Yeah,
and
he did it in the opening play of the first game of this series was from
almost the same spot.
Was pretty much the same spot. Yeah, I mean, you have to take it into account. You can't not factor it in. And Paul George being the elite player, the superstar that he is, he should be aware that Damian Lillard can do that. It's almost like a lot of the players have overlooked him the last few years, just because he's was he up in Portland, hidden away and waving my fingers in the air from everybody. But no one's hidden away in the age of League Pass and YouTube and Snapchat.
Yeah, he's not hidden away. He's in State Farm adverts. Definitely not.
But Dame's been the highlight thing since he came into the league. He had a great rookie season, and he's been pretty good since then. I mean, last year we just overlooked him a little bit because they got absolutely torched in that first round by the Pelicans. But it was unbelievable, and it's certainly a moment that I think I can watch and repeat again and again and again. Goes down with plenty of Brandon Roy buzzer beaters, which I watched when I was growing up. So
you're totally a Blazers fan. I'm saying it on the podcast. I'm going on record. The amount of influence and impact and just memories and nostalgia you have around the Blazers franchise. Yeah, you're a closet Blazer fan.
I may well be,
But I totally get it. He is impressive. At what point would you say he's not underrated though? Because let's face it, he's been snubbed for All-Stars before, but he has had All NBAs as well. What recognition would you like Damian Lillard to receive in order for you to be satisfied that he is adequately rated?
I want to say most valuable player, but I'll probably get some stick for it.
I think he's a candidate for it. I don't think he's MVP this year.
It comes down to an argument we have every year as to how do you define most valuable player. Most valuable player, right? Damian Lillard in Portland, the effect he's had on the community there, the impact he's had on that region, the sort of spectacle that he puts on every night for those fans in that city, and then to drag the Blazers into the playoffs, consistently since he's been there, and to perform on the big stage 2012 to get them through past Houston, who were, that team was stacked when you go back and look at it. Like Chandler Parsons was still Chandler Parsons. Dwight Howard was there. James Harden was there. Like, that was a good team. That was one of the supposed contenders that year, and they knocked them off in sheer fashion. And that shot, I would arguably say, is more impressive than what he did the other night, just because of, I think it was 0.9 on the clock that year, and he had to catch it and
curling round
just
left,
heave it up.
Screen.
It was incredible, and he stands on the scorer's table and yells "Rip City," like, as memorable as it gets. But yeah, I think I'd say he probably has to win MVP at some stage, just to get the recognition. But Russell Westbrook's got an MVP, for Christ's sake, and Russ isn't that much.
Let's start the Russell Westbrook hate, shall we?
Yeah, we'll just drag on to what everyone else has been doing this week. But Westbrook's got plenty of failures.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just quickly going back to that it being a bad shot thing. I don't care what he says because it is. I was trying to egg you on a bit there. It's definitely salt because you cannot say it's a bad shot when that was his 10th three.
Paul George would never take a shot like that in his life. He would not have the balls.
Well, yeah, and like even some of the other threes, I'm not convinced that was the hardest three he made that game. I mean,
Probably
it was
not.
the furthest three. Did you see the first one where he sort of double clutched it? Let's just get that in there. That was just obscene. You know me. It was just a huge performance, huge game, big FU to the general NBA community, including myself, who did not think they were coming out of this round.
Well, that's the thing. They did like all those promo videos, and in the promo videos, they had like the CBS's paper view, like the view of CBS's website, and it was like everyone had picked the Thunder. Mm-hmm. And I just, teams have traditionally done that in the past when they've been, up in series and won series, but like that's why the moment was so epic and so memorable, is because it was the culmination of almost a sort of 7-8 month period of all this talk between who's the best point guard, between Russ and Lillard, and where does Lillard rank among the sort of golden era of point guards that we have in the NBA at the moment. And that's why there's people coming out today and writing articles about him being a top 5 player. Like, it's taken one shot to all of a sudden throw him into people's top 5 in the league at the moment. It's insane that just one moment has the ability to do that in the NBA, but it does. But what a night in Portland, and knocking off the Thunder in some seriously fine fashion was a really memorable moment. But I guess the real question is, where do the Oklahoma City Thunder go from here? Because there's only so far Russell Westbrook seems to be able to take this team. Paul George obviously re-upped with them because he enjoyed he enjoyed playing for that team and didn't like he got to hide away from the limelight. He wasn't in Los Angeles or anywhere like that. They put together a really good season. They looked like they were tearing into the playoffs in good form, but it all fell apart for them. I mean, where does this team go from here? Do they have to? I've seen stuff today about moving Russ to the 2 because he's not a natural point guard and he doesn't know when to slow it down. The reference that Charles Barkley made is that he's a car and he's trying to always do 100 miles an hour when he should be doing 50 a lot of the time, which I think is
so I get that. That's something Joe and I have spoken about on this pod before, like the specifically to Westbrook and players like John Wall who rely on athleticism and don't build other parts of the game. In fact, we've talked about Dwight Howard in a similar way. Obviously a completely different kind of player.
Yeah,
but
Dwight burned himself out though.
Exactly, the reliance on physical attributes that depreciate more rapidly, whereas they need to build other parts of their game, and Russ has never done that. And I'm not convinced. I'm sure it'll all come out soon. So obviously you've got the potential torn rotator cuff that Paul George has been carrying. So they're gonna lean on that as an excuse as to why it happened.
Yeah, that's why he couldn't get his arms up quick enough to block that shot.
And I'm not convinced Russ is healthy because this is a huge drop off from last year. And he started the season with I think he had a pre-season. There was some kind of scoping in his knee, and then within about a week of the season starting, he was out for like 2 or 3 weeks with a sprained ankle. It's odd that he's hurt in that way and dropped off so much. It's not odd that he's hurt because he seems to break his knees every other season. It's just the way he plays, he can't do it forever. And if this is what he is now, he needs to fix something. I can't see him sliding to the 2 because he can't shoot.
Well, does that throw up?
How are you going to?
Does that throw up the question of whether or not you could trade him and get some value back for him while he's still one of the elite talents in the NBA? I mean, 3rd straight season averaging a triple-double. It's ridiculous when you go and look at it, but it's also the 3rd straight season that the Thunder have been knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, which is not
the big
ideal
thing for me.
But they're in the Western Conference at the end of the day.
Yeah, they are, and they're not a bad team by any stretch. And they came up against a Blazers team that they're playing above themselves at the minute, if you're perfectly honest.
And the West has proved yet again this season that you don't tend to sweep anyone in that conference. Like, teams are good enough to scrap out a win when they need to get one, when their back's on against the wall. Whereas contrast to the East, where you can still get sweeps because some of the teams that get in there probably necessarily shouldn't be in there, aren't talented enough to have an impact on the opponent they're playing against. But in the West, like, we saw how stacked it was trying to get into the 8th seed this season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just trying to think of like how, what the future holds for us.
Well, he can't go 11 of 31 again in a playoff game.
Well, he like as much as the Blazers won this game, and wow, this sounds cliche. The Thunder
lost it. They were up. They were cruising.
Was it 26-8?
Yeah.
28, yeah, and I fired up the iPad at like 5 a.m, as I do, and sat there eating my sugar-free muesli.
Being a British NBA fan, don't you love it?
Yeah, I know. And I was just sat there I was like, are you kidding me? They're down 15 or so with like 7 minutes to go. I was like, this is not good. And then they came storming back, and I couldn't help but, and I've rewound and watched several times the closing minutes and just how much Russ contributes to the Blazers winning. I mean, you had the charge where he could have quite easily kicked out because Lillard had come so far over to help CJ. You had the over the back foul on Mo Harkless, which is just, I know like you got to hustle for a rebound, but at what point do you go, you know what, I'm not going to try and clout the guy who's a 1.5 foot taller than me because it's probably going to be a foul.
Yeah.
And then that last possession, this is what I didn't get. This is what I never get is, why is the ball in his hands versus someone like Paul George in that situation?
Paul George doesn't want it.
That's a
Paul
problem.
George has
straight
never
away.
wanted it. In Indiana, he had a chance to win a game against, I assume remember it was LeBron. Was it the Heat at the time? And he gave up the game-winning shot to somebody else, and they didn't get through, or he took it and he missed it, one or the other. But he's never been a big moment guy. I think that's
more of the problem. Like, as much as we can blame Russ, he shouldn't, like, Paul George, if that is the case, should not get away with this.
No.
Because if you looked at how they were matched up then, Russ was up against El Farouq Amino, who is the staunchest of Portland's defenders and has an abundance of length over us and played that defensively perfect. The rest of the Blazers stayed true to where they were defending. They didn't hedge, they didn't drop in, just didn't even hint that there was help coming. On the other wing, you had George being faced up by Harkless, who's their second best wing defender. The ball should have been in George's hands. They should have run a pick and roll with Schroeder, who was I love that name, Schroeder, who was
attempted
being
German
guarded.
twang, was it?
Yeah, I thought I'd try for you because you were born out there.
It was.
So they should have run a pick and roll there to try and cause a switch, because then you'd have had Paul George against Seth Curry. And I'm not being funny, I prefer
That's
those
a mismatch
odds
every day of the week.
Exactly, much prefer those odds. So I don't know whether it's if it's Paul George, then I'd be tempted to trade him as well, because if you're getting rid of Westbrook, why would you want him still there if he doesn't want to lead your team?
Yeah,
because you might get back exactly the value of Westbrook, but it's not going to be an individual player. I doubt. No, it would be a package. So then Paul George is your de facto leader. If it wasn't George going, oh hi guys, I kind of don't want to do this. That was a kind of a Game of Zonesy kind of was. But shout out to the Melmoth brothers. Get me an extras job. If it's not him, then what the hell is Coach Donovan saying to them? Because why isn't he identifying that? Why aren't they calling that play? I just don't get it. Russ ends up taking a shot with 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and it gives Lillard 18 seconds to get down the court.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'd have used up a heck of a lot more of that clock, because I would much rather give someone 8 seconds to get the ball from one end of the court to the other, or one end of the court to the mid, as it turned out to be, than 18. It's just, so much went wrong with there that was just fundamental decision making, and it makes me angry.
That, and who's on the other team. The other team has CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard and Rodney Hood and Seth Curry. Like, they have shooters. They can get a shot if you give them the opportunity. I know CJ didn't have the greatest of games, but he hit shots when they needed him to. He was only 1 of 7 from downtown in the end, but that one he got was critical. But I don't know. I guess it's the Thunder Russ probably not using his teammates, but you say that he did have 14 assists, so it's not like he isn't passing the ball. But Jeremy Grant had a really good game. I think he had a pretty standout series. I think we're going to see a lot of him in the future.
I like him.
I like him a lot. Yeah,
but I can't work out what it is. He tends to he puts his body on the line a lot, and so most of the time you see him in a game, he's picking himself up off the floor. And he gets a few charges here and there, but a lot of times they call blocking fouls. But I like the.
He's got serious energy, and he played 44 minutes, which in that game, yeah.
He's
Joe's been a big fan of him all season. Like every time we've done a podcast and the Thunder have been mentioned, Jeremy Grant's been like the first name that rolls out of Joe Herbert's lips. But yeah, he's been phenomenal. I think Dennis Schroeder was really impressive. He's already said today in his exit interviews that he's going to start working on his perimeter game. Because he believes if he has a bit more of a reliable perimeter game in the future, then that could help the Thunder, which is true. But again, he was pretty good from downtown.
It would allow Russ to drive.
Yeah,
sorry, carry
on. But they've got some decisions coming up in the summer. I think Markieff Morris and Raymond Felton are unrestricted free agents, so we'll see what happens with them. But this is a team that traditionally has been afraid of paying the luxury tax, but now they've got these two guys here. I think they just have to try and keep this unit together and add to it where they can.
So what does it mean then for one of our? I'm pretty sure it's one of yours. It's definitely one of mine. One of our favourite players, Aquaman.
Well, I see people saying he's not been very impressive this series, but I don't know what else he could have.
I think the issue is the way the matchups have been wasn't ideal for him.
No,
and it sort of leads me down the road of how valuable is this type of player to a franchise in this era. Like in the regular season,
traditional back to the basket center is what we're talking about here, yeah.
Yeah, basically, the lumbering giants. He can't spread the floor. He can't create those extra driving lanes like someone like Brook Lopez, very easy example to make, can do. Obviously, he provides you a lot more defensive presence and rebounding numbers than Brook does. But it's at what point is this an overvalued type of player now? I mean, what's he on? 25 million, and I don't begrudge him that at all because I love the dude.
And he buys a lot of beef for that.
So much. Yeah, but it's just like what is his value going forwards? He needs to adapt his game, I think, or evolve it to allow them to have more options.
I guess it's the fact that he's probably not as athletic as a lot of the players in that position now. He does, like you say, he does lumber around a lot. It's kind of lucky he was playing against Enes Kanter because I think Nurkic would have probably gave him a harder game of it. But the way the Blazers were playing, throwing the length of Harkless and Aminu and the switches they make, I think just made it really difficult for Steven Adams to have any sort of an impact on the game. And it's almost like because of the way Russ plays, sometimes he backs off in terms of the way he crashes the boards because Russ is there all the time. Like your guard should not be getting 7-8 more rebounds than your center. It's just ridiculous that seems to be the case a lot of the time. And I know it's because Russ is always going for triple doubles, but like sometimes you have to think, just rein that in. Like, do the point guard thing, shoot threes, drive in the paint, pass the ball, like rebounding. Let the big guys handle that. Because that
those stats.
Yeah. Well, if you're not grabbing an offensive board or defensive or a rebound or anything, you need to just. They need rhythm, and if they're not scoring, which sometimes they're not, they need to be doing something else. They need to feel like they're having an impact on this game, and it's just about the way he feels at the time. And if he's grabbing 10 rebounds and only scoring 6 or 7 points, then he's going to feel better than if he's scoring 6 or 7 points and getting no rebounds. So,
I think that's fair. I'm intrigued to see what they do this summer because something has got to change. Who would have thought they'd ended up in the same spot they did last year, having got rid of Carmelo Anthony?
It's crazy. They have an MVP on their team. They have one of the elite perimeter defenders, as we were saying. They have a guy who said, was flirting with the Lakers and all these other teams and ended up staying there. Like, they put everything together. They looked like they were going to be magnificent. They're a fantastic defensive team, which is even more impressive that they won this series. They lost this series, because defensively throughout the regular season they were phenomenal, and then we saw it again in the one series win in this one. But yeah, but
it's interesting that their efficiency on both ends of the floor significantly dropped off after the All-Star break, and it makes me wonder, like going back to it again, whether how big an impact Paul George was having, because we were talking about him as an MVP for about 5 minutes back in March, and then it suddenly disappeared at the same time that this shoulder injury arose. So if that is maybe that is the kind of impact that George has had on this team, because it's ridiculous how much they dropped off on both ends.
Yeah, well, they're 4-12 in the postseason with this Thunder lineup, so they're not doing great. And there was a Western Conference exec midweek after the game was basically just saying that he understands that Russ is a transcendent player. Like, athletically, he's phenomenal and he fights all the time, but he's not entirely convinced that he's a transcendent winner, which I think kind of speaks a lot if, some other Western Conference executive is saying that about one of the best players in the game.
Yeah, I think it does.
So anyway, moving on to one of the other series, Denver, San Antonio. Game 6 is tonight, so we probably don't want to touch on that too much. We're recording this on Thursday evening, but if you had to make a quick prediction now, who would you take?
For the single game?
Single game?
San Antonio.
San Antonio. Ooh, we're going to Game 7, boys.
We are going to Game
7. Game 7!
Oh, that's ours. Need to bring that video back.
Yeah, last night's game, I also saw the Rockets go through against the Jazz. They won that series, closing that one out at home 4-1. Not really any surprises there. I think the Rockets are quite happy that the other series in the Western Conference between the Clippers and the Warriors has been extended a little bit. It might help them, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, that got extended as well after the Clippers won on the road in the Oracle, which is the first time the Warriors have lost back-to-back games at home since the 2016 playoffs, I think.
It's mental, isn't it? Absolutely mental. Because they lost, it was in the finals to the Cavs, wasn't it? Part of that infamous... I'm not going to mention the numbers just in case any Warriors fans listening, because I know it's a traumatic experience for them all. But yeah, this Clips team, amazing. We've said a few times this season already, like how this is like a fairy tale team, not as in like, there's, I don't know what I would describe what I'm thinking right now, but you know what I mean? They're not a fairy tale team. It's not like, there's not birds tweeting around them, but there's the concept of this.
There's no self-entitled superstar on this team, is what you're saying.
This is exactly it. They are a team that are winning without a superstar.
Gallinari.
And that is something I love. And they should be having the floor wiped with them every single game. But there's like a complacency and an arrogance to the Warriors at the minute, combined with not as much depth as they need at this point in the season.
No,
I don't know that rotations get shorter. But...
And the Clippers put 71 points on them in the first half, which is a franchise record for the Clippers. And it wasn't like the Warriors played that badly. I mean, they still had 31 assists. They only had 8 turnovers. It was just they just didn't look like they could be bothered on the defensive end of the court.
There was when the game was still within 2 possessions in the last minute, they were doing some really bizarre things, just like
they're just pissing about.
Yeah, and I know that Kerr said at halftime he wasn't pleased with the energy. It's like, well,
change it.
Duh.
Get out there and change it. I mean, Durant had 45, which is a playoff career high for him. He was 5 of 12 from downtown. He was carrying them effectively. You only had 24 and 22 points from Steph and Clay, respectively. But yeah, I mean, to see what the Clippers are doing is phenomenal, and to see the situation they're running themselves into this summer with the chance to land 1, probably 2 max players is just going to be, fantastic for Clippers fans who've been in the dulls for a hell of a long time. But Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, I think those two have to come as a pair. They're phenomenal to watch together. It's like watching Mario and Luigi. It's incredible.
I love Harrell. He's just like just the kind of hustle heart player that just makes me smile. There was one dunk he had where I can't remember who it was. Might have been Patrick Beverley, threw a bounce pass into the lane. It looked like Harrell was about to lose it, and he caught it as he sort of spun into the lane and went up over 2 Warriors and dunked it. And I was just like, oh my God, I need to watch that again. Screen record. I'm going to watch that 100 times.
Yeah, it's like they've got another level of connection there, because when those two are playing together, it's just they're constantly feeding and setting each other up. It's phenomenal. And Lou Williams was asked, like, how does he perform so well coming off the bench? And he's like, well, let's be honest, no one's ever given me a starting role, so I just kind of had to adapt to what I was given. They got him on an absolute steal of a deal, because after he left the Lakers, like, I don't think he wanted to uproot his family again. So the Clippers got him on a bargain basement deal, and it's paid off massively. He's been a phenomenal player for them, and it's not surprised he's down for Sixth Man of the Year again.
Yeah, not a surprise. Is there any doubt in your mind that the Warriors come out of this? That's a yes.
It's probably a yes, but purely because this lack of energy on the defensive end has been here all season, and it just hasn't, like, they haven't flicked the switch. Everyone just has said they can flick the switch. If you're, in playoff mode, you would have just walked through and blazed through last night's game, but they look a little bit disjointed. It's almost like they weren't expecting to lose Boogie Cousins, actually, because the series has kind of been a little bit different since he went down. But
well, yeah, I don't think anyone expects you to tear a quad.
No. But they were banking on him being there for them to counter the size that other teams are putting up against them, and teams are now.
Because that's been their one weakness.
Yeah.
That we've spoken about before. Like, they cannot handle physical inside presences,
which Harrell certainly is.
Yeah, exactly. And Bogut is certainly not the player capable of doing that.
No.
It's just bizarre. This whole situation really reminds me of that old. I don't know if it's so much of a cliche, but certainly like an old coaching adage about hard work beating talent if talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah,
and it just what they're doing is phenomenal. The season could end for them Friday night, and that's a win for me.
Well, Doc Rivers is a good coach as well, so you've got a great basketball mind on the bench, and you've got players who just do what they're told on the court, and you're seeing that. Like, they've got two rookies on their team, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Shamet, who they don't look like rookies, man. They're out there shutting down Steph Curry every night and balling. Like, they know what they're doing, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's a really awesome sort of situation and circumstance that it
Game
presently
6
is now.
at home in the Staples, like Steve Ballmer going completely mental. That's going to be one heck of an atmosphere.
Busting out the hot dog cannon again.
If they can keep it close, then I don't see why they can't force a Game 7. But whether they'd win the Game 7 or not, that's probably
exactly. I don't see them winning 3 straight against the Warriors. And I think that's where
superstar talent makes a difference.
yeah, exactly. But it's the Warriors have lost 3 straight before, so.
They have. Well, our Game 6 hashtag NBA in the UK poll, which we put up on Twitter this afternoon, has 59% of you taking the Warriors, so it's closer than I thought it was going to be.
That is closer.
Yeah,
that is
a lot closer. And as for the other game that we were just talking about, the Nuggets and the Spurs, 62% taking the Nuggets for Game 6 tonight. But you will know the result of that one by the time you listen to this podcast. So we'll move on very quickly. Right, the Eastern Conference, man, oh man, this is ridiculous. The level of talent in the top 4 teams in the West, the Eastern Conference. I keep saying Western because I just assume it's the West that are good. In the Eastern Conference this season has been phenomenal. They've all made it through. We've got the matchups that we were dreaming of. We've got Bucks Celtics and Sixers Raptors, or Raptors Sixers, whatever way you want to phrase it. There's so many storylines you can go through on this one, but I just want to get quick overview thoughts on the series, really. I mean, Bucks Celtics, how the hell did the Celtics match up to Giannis, and have the Celtics managed to flip the switch? It looked like they had the other night. It looks like they've sort of round themselves into playoff form. All the talent is there, and it's clearly obvious that Kyrie Irving loves playing in the postseason. But Gordon Hayward is surely the difference maker for them if he can play well in this series.
I'm nervous.
Nervous as a Celtics fan? Yeah, okay.
I'm not a Celtics fan.
Right. No, I know you're not a Celtics fan. I meant if you were a Celtics fan.
Well, it's oddly I get fandom. I understand it, but there seems to be this sort of blind ignorance
from Celtics fans. I get it. I mentioned that during the week.
Yeah, and like, I understand confidence, and to be fair, this is a really sweeping statement because there are definitely Celtics fans who are rational. And
Josh Coyne.
Josh Coyne is one of them. There you go. I'll give you a plug. And once again, he's referenced when we're talking about the Celtics, which I know is one of his favourite pastimes. So this team is probably the best designed team to get past the Bucks in terms of the Eastern Conference talent pools. But I don't see this 4-0, the sweep of as the Pacers as being some kind of indicator that they've discovered the greatness that they had last year at all. Like, I've heard Celtics fans talk about how, it was a fairy tale. Get out. You averaged less than 100 points. And I get that pace comes into that as well, but No. Like, you played a team that lost its star player, and from the loss of their star player, were a sub 500 team for the rest of the season. What did you expect to happen? Like, great, well done, you won 4 games. I'm not taking away from that. Just don't think that somehow this is magically means that you guys are about to go 4-4-4-4. Like, that's nuts to me. Like, Indiana had a great defense for most of the season, but again, that slipped. And interestingly, if we look at offensive ratings, and this is where it gets really worrying for me, only 4 of the 16 playoff teams had a lower offensive rating, and all 4 than Boston, and all 4 of them are now done for the summer. That worries me, because they're going to go against a team now that has the number 1 defensive rating in the league.
And they played low-scoring games against the Pacers in the first round. They took advantage of the Pacers' lack of a go-to guy, I think it's safe to say, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, massively. Exactly. They didn't. Several times in that series, they were down, and because the Pacers didn't have a closer, they lost it.
Yeah. Tyreek Evans, bless his heart, tried ever so hard to beat that guy in Game 4. He looked like he was the only player on the court who was trying it sometimes for the Pacers, but it just wasn't enough. Like, you're sacked against a roster that is full of talent, and all season long we're predicting them to win 60 games. They go out and they sort of piss about for the regular season and get to the playoffs and then somehow come together. I don't quite read into that fairy tale story, especially with the way that the Bucks dispatched the Pistons.
See, I'm not even buying into that.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy into it.
We'll get onto that in a
They
sec.
weren't close games. Like, I know the Pistons had a lead in that Game 4, right half time and towards the end, I seem to remember, but Milwaukee, Giannis just went nuts and was like, I'm not losing this game. And I think it's a different weapon in his arsenal that he's got this year. And, how the Celtics will play him is one of the big question marks, because last season when they played in the playoffs, it obviously went to Game 7. Boston won that one, but Horford spent a lot of his time guarding Giannis, and I'm not entirely sure Giannis is gonna sort of wilt away like he did at times last season.
He cannot, not with the season he's had. Like, Boston, like, don't get me wrong, that is a talented collection of players. But whereas last year, that team missing their 2 key stars, or what we thought would be the key stars in Irving and Hayward, Hayward being the guy that we thought would be a star and isn't quite at the minute, they were greater than the sum of their parts. Now it feels like the opposite this year. It feels like the total parts is less than the sum of the whole. I've fluffed that line completely, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It just feels the opposite. There's too much individual sort of looking at it here. In terms of Horford versus Giannis, if I'm Horford, I am sagging as far off him as I can, but not so far that he gets his gazelle legs into gear and starts doing his Euro step around half the arena. I'm sagging off, and the other 4 guys have just got to stay, no help. Like, if Giannis shoots something stupid like 70% from within 3 feet, okay, cool, but he's still probably going to go for 40. If you cut the other guys out, I'd rather let Giannis get huge numbers but take the win.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like, I don't know how they're going to stop him, because the minute they start coming to help, he's a smart enough player that he's going to find them, and they have got absolutely lethal outside shooting.
Well, Boston did that last year. The first 2 games of that series, I think Game 2, Giannis had 30, and in the first one he had 35, and they were letting him go off, and they were just stopping everybody else on that roster. And that's where I think this series is going to come down to, is what are you going to get from Eric Bledsoe? What are you going to get from George Hill coming off the bench, and Pat Connaughton and Sterling Brown, who's been forced into playing 25 minutes a game in the first round at least. But Malcolm Brogdon, if he comes back, he could have a big impact on them. He was one of the top 10 3-point shooters in the league during the regular season. I think he could make a massive impact because he's a pretty good playmaker as well, and he's got a lot of length. But I think it's going to come down to like the benches in this series. I think, like, I know Giannis is going to be as impactful as he is, and Kyrie's going to be the same, but it's going to come down to the individual moments from the sort of the lesser guys. I hate using that phrase, but like, it's going to take Eric Bledsoe and Chris Middleton. I seem to remember torched them last year in the series, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again this year, because there's no Marcus Smart to stop him.
That's a big loss. That's a key loss, because you could even stick him on Giannis for a couple of possessions, and despite the height difference,
he will
be a thorn in the side. Yeah, he is a beast. I mentioned earlier I wasn't enamoured by the sweep of the Pistons because they were the Pistons. There was one of my favourite lines so far from a colour commentator this playoffs is, aside obviously from the Jeff Van Gundy, that Steph Curry system.
Oh,
Mark
that was
Jackson,
hilarious.
Don't we all look the
Yes.
same? We don't all look the same. No, it wasn't that one. It's one of the Pistons games. The commentator described the Pistons as looking much more like an NBA team when Blake is around. And I was like, wow, that's savage. Firstly, more like, not like, just more like. So they didn't even look like an NBA team, just a bit more. And secondly, it was an NBA team, not a playoff team. He was basically saying, these guys don't look like the Phoenix Suns. And I was just like... and I was so savage. But
Devin Booker's
it was almost like he was
fun.
it was almost like he was apologetic. I think it must have been the NBA Saturday or Sunday broadcast team, and it just sounded like he was apologetic to all the fans around the globe, and like, this is supposed to be our marquee game of the week, and honestly,
I'm sorry,
all the franchises aren't this bad.
Well, Detroit are in the dumps anyway. I'm not too sure what that franchise is supposed to do, but yeah, those first round games were not close. And Blake tried to come out in Game 4 and play on one leg, and it didn't go very well for him. I know he got a standing ovation, but yeah, I think Malcolm Brogdon would be massive if he returns in this series, because he doesn't just bring like the additional 3-point shooting, but he is that playmaker who can attack off the dribble and get in there and cause some problems. And I really think that sometimes Eric Bledsoe can kind of switch off. I think it's fair to say he's had a phenomenal season, but certainly last year in the playoffs, there's times where he kind of disappeared. But yeah, this series is too close to call. I mean, I think it's going to go 6 or 7.
See, I think it's going to go 5 or 7, because I don't see Boston losing a win or go home game on their own floor.
No,
I think it goes. I think Bucks win, but it's in 5 or 7, and I can easily see it go 7, easily.
Okie dokie. I'm going to avoid making a prediction. No,
well,
I'm joking.
Okay,
Joking.
Right, hang me out straight.
I'm going Bucks in 6.
Bucks in 6.
Bucks in 6. I just think like
So
the storylines around this are pretty cool as well. Like you've got,
what is that scene going to be like? Giannis stood atop the table in
the garden, just dropped 50,
hearing boos from every single Celtics fan
as he lifts the crown off the corpse of. Oh wait, LeBron James. You can't take
Kyrie.
it off LeBron James, can he? Because he's not in Boston. But yeah,
he's not even in the playoffs.
No, he's not even in
let
the playoffs.
Boston.
He's posting stupid stuff on Instagram about him in the Lakers locker room, which I thought was weird earlier on.
Do you know what? I saw that clip and it made me feel like
you on an acid trip?
no, like the ex lover who is trying to make out that their life's fine and they're not missing anyone.
Yeah.
And like you're just like, oh no, wait a sec. My new partner, the NBA playoffs in this situation, I completely forgot you existed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, made me chuckle.
We're saying viewing figures
are
down, but oh well. We've got the Bucks and the Raptors and the Sixers and the Warriors and all these fantastic teams. There's plenty more basketball for people to be watching. But if Milwaukee wins this series, it sets them up as one of the elite teams for probably the next decade. It might make Giannis the best player on the planet. If Boston loses, then what happens to the Celtics? Does Kyrie Irving leave and sod off to Madison Square Garden, or does he stick around and pull in Anthony Davis? Like there's storylines that follow all of these series. Right, moving on to the last one, Philadelphia and Toronto. This one's tasty, considering this is the two teams that both made late regular season trades before the deadline to sort of push themselves over the top in the postseason. And here they are matching up against each other. Toronto were really, really impressive after losing that first game against Orlando in round 1. Game 5, they didn't give up the lead once. It was phenomenal. It was just like watching a bunch of machines out there playing basketball, and I think Kawhi Leonard has a lot to do with that. They're a phenomenal defensive unit, and I think we're going to end up with a offensive and defensive battle in this series. I think the Sixers probably took advantage of the fact that Russell and some of the other guys, some of the other young guys on that team, perhaps had gassed themselves out. I think it's fair to say, like they all went a little bit doolally after they won that first game, and that series wasn't the same afterwards. So doolally. I'm throwing out some stupid British phrases here. But I guess the question is, I mean, how do the Toronto Raptors go out and defend Joel Embiid, and how did the Sixers defend Kawhi Leonard?
It's a great question. This is going to be a bloodbath. Like on paper, I think Philly should win, but in reality, I can't look beyond Toronto.
I can't look beyond Toronto because of the defensive matchups that are out there. The guys they can throw at Embiid, I think, are going to make it really difficult for him to get any sort of traction in this series. Kawhi Leonard is a better player than everybody on that Sixers roster. I know they brought Jimmy Butler in to be like the guy to win them games in the playoffs and to guard guys like Kawhi, but I still don't think it's going to make a difference. And Toronto's depth on the bench is just on a completely different planet from what the Sixers can throw out there. So
yeah, I think one of the big things for me, you mentioned how do you stop someone like Joel Embiid, is try and make everything as physical and as toll's the wrong word, but as taking as much of a toll as possible on his body, because we know he's hurt and we know how important he is to that team, and his health. It's a shame that I thought we would be on this now, but it's a shame that once again his durability as a player has been called into question. I also think there's chemistry issues, like there's inconsistency between that big four, and I worry and I feel bad saying this because I stand for this guy, the ability to exploit JJ in that.
Oh God, he's just a sieve. Yeah. He may as well not be there. He's like a turnstile on the perimeter. It's great.
Exactly. So you're going to get, Mike Scott, guys like that will be in. This is where they could have ideally, done with holding on to someone like Landry Shamet. But you mentioned it, the Raptors, they're a team, they're a unit, they know their roles, they know their responsibilities. And what's great is if their best player is down and missing, they're even better.
Yeah. And
that's ridiculous. Like, I mean, Kawhi's been, some of his games have just been ridiculous this playoff so far. And it's just, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, they're probably going to lose game one because that's what Toronto do.
Yeah.
But I think this is done in 6.
Yeah, I think there may be some really, really scrappy matchups, and there's probably going to be some really close games that come down to the wire. But I think at the end of the day, the depth on this Raptors team is just too much. Like you've got guys who've been in the playoffs and had big moments before. I think the Marc Gasol trade is going to be massive, and that's why they went out and got him. They got him for a series against the Sixers where he was going to match up against Joel Embiid. Me and you have discussed it before, but the figures, the defensive figures when Marc Gasol is playing Embiid are not great if you're a Joel Embiid fan. He pretty much embarrassed him on the 2 regular season games with the Grizzlies during the regular season, which obviously took place before the trade took place. But he's just slotted into the system. I think they've worked out the kinks. Certainly when they were first playing like the Knicks during the regular season, there were a lot of missed passes because I don't think a lot of the Raptors players quite realised how good a playmaker Marc Gasol is. That's disappeared now. And you've got guys like Norman Powell who are, coming off the bench and having an impact, which during long stretch of the regular season, they just weren't really getting anything reliable from him. But I think they've got bodies to throw at Joel Embiid. They're going to beat him up, and then they can mix it up and go small ball on you as well and cause problems that way. I just think I know Nick Nurse is Nick Nurse isn't the most experienced of coaches, but I don't think that's going to make a difference at the end of the day, because I think Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green and Marc Gasol and like the IQ and the guys that have been there and done that are going to make a difference. And that's another thing. You've got the matchup of Redick versus Danny Green. Like when Redick has a bad game, you don't get anything from him. When Danny Green has a bad game, he's still a really good defender. Like he will still, get you a couple of steals a game, and he'll still get in the passing lanes and cause problems. I don't think Redick can have an impact like that on the game, and it's a shame. But I just think that their depth that they sacrificed to bring Jimmy Butler in the first place is going to probably be their Achilles heel in this series.
Yeah, I get that. I still like when you see them on the floor sometimes, though. I still just sort of like take a breath where I'm just like, holy crap, this Philly team is big. You know,
Both
we
teams are
talk
big,
about
I think.
yeah, but for some reason, Philly in my head just seem bigger, like in terms of length and versatility.
Simmons and Embiid.
Yeah, right. Even Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler, they're not. You know, they're big.
And Boban.
Yeah, like, I don't know what to say. Like they if they can spread the you know what though, I'm intrigued to see what happens with Simmons here, because you know Kawhi's going to face off against him to start with.
EVU, mano a mano.
Yeah, which is going to be a really interesting matchup. Yeah, that and what else they're going to do? Tobias Harris is as great as he is, and I think he is great. He relies too heavily on that mid-range jump shot, which is analytically poor. And then Jimmy comes and goes.
Yeah.
Great games and then terrible games. Then it's these inconsistencies and holes that they're just going to exploit. I can't look beyond Toronto.
I think we have all forgotten how good Kawhi Leonard is. Like, I know he had some time out, but like
speak for yourself.
We're seeing him in the prime time, just like he's like a Terminator out there. Like, the reference has been made many times before on this podcast and many others, but it was unbelievable watching him out there against Orlando the other night. And he's now got a partner in crime. Like, you've got Batman, but you've got Robin now in Pascal Siakam. You know, Spicy.
Yeah, we haven't even
Spicy P has been absolutely
phenomenal.
Like, he did his post-game conference the other day, and there were journalists from all over the world speaking to him, you know, guys speaking to him in French and all the different languages. Like, he's become like one of the go-to, you know, stars of the moment. And like Montrezl Harrell, really, he's just had a breakout playoffs where everyone's paying attention to him, and he had a phenomenal first round series. I mean, he averaged 22 points a game, which is pretty damn good.
And what's interesting is with his length, he's going to see possessions where he's sent out to match up on Embiid, and if he can have some semblance of success, they're going to go ultra small.
Yeah, and his motor is just endless. Like, he can have a quiet game by his standards. Like, he had 16 points against Orlando in game 4, and he was still, you know, in the corner making threes, which he had no right to be making. Like, he had guys all over him, but because of his length and how good his catch and shoot corner three is, it was nothing but net. And he's a really good cutter as well. He's trying to cut the back door and dunk it. He's like a secret weapon. Like, he's not really secret anymore, but he's a guy they can actually rely on now. And I just think Toronto is full of so many guys where if they need to sort of lean on them for a little bit, they can get that. I guess the biggest worry would be when Kawhi and when Lowry and Siakam are all on the bench, which did happen occasionally during the first round. Their offense kind of drops off a little bit, which isn't really surprising. So we might see some split minutes, and you know, we might see Lowry running the team while Leonard gets a bit of rest, and vice versa.
But do you think that will happen as much this series? I mean, the quality of an opponent is significantly higher. Yeah. Their rest is going to go down. Their minutes are going to go up. The opportunity for all three to be on the bench at the same time is going to decrease.
Well, Nurse got a lot of criticism in game 1, didn't he? Because they were saying he didn't really play Leonard enough, but I think Leonard wasn't too far off his actual average minutes for regular season games anyway. But
we love to overreact to game 1.
We do, but he's come out and he's had 34 minutes. I think Carl's playing 35, 36 as well. Like, they're out there and they are playing some significant minutes. But you know, Kyle Lowry got completely killed for game 1, but he's been magnificent since then. So we're going to overreact to game 1, but yeah, I'm going to go with Raptors in 5.
Ooh,
I'm
spicy.
I am spicy. No, I'm generally, I think this Raptors team's fantastic. I think the storylines that are there, like, they've gone all in. This is where they were meant to be, but if they don't progress any further, then Kawhi's probably gone. He might be gone anyway, but at least if they can get to a conference finals and have a go of it, it proves that he's got a team there that they can truly build around. I mean, you look, even if they lose him this year, they've still got a really talented roster.
It's amazing how different the Eastern landscape could look next year. You know, if the Raptors fail and Kawhi doesn't stay, or if Philadelphia fail and
Butler and
Tobias
go,
it's and then Boston as well. There's there is a lot riding on playoff success this year for the future of the Eastern Conference and how it will
Which
look.
is a bummer, really, because like we've wanted a competitive Eastern Conference for ages, because it just seemed to be LeBron every year, all the time, and now this year we don't have any. Nobody has any clue who it's actually going to be. A lot of people think it's going to be Milwaukee, but people wouldn't be surprised if it's Toronto. And if Philly got on a run, then it could be Philly, and if Boston got on a run, well, it could be them as well. Like it's we've got some incredible series coming up this weekend. Just trying to find out when they start actually UK time, because I've lost track as to when they're taking place.
So the Sunday game is 6 p.m. start, and that's the Boston series.
6 p.m. Lovely.
Yeah, because I was talking to someone at work about it today, and they were like, "Is that UK time?" I was like, "Yep." Early basketball, which is amazing. I'm trying to think. There was like a 5:30 start this week. There might have been a Philly game as well. It might have been Philly Brooklyn. And I was just like, I was doing, Easter bank holiday, beautiful sunshine. So I was obviously out in the garden doing work, and I was just like, tools down, NBA. And it was just amazing to just transition into the house and then get to watch NBA for about 6 hours straight.
Yeah. Raptors 76ers is scheduled for Saturday, but there doesn't appear to be a time at the moment.
Yeah, there's a TBD on it, isn't there?
Which is annoying, but we'll hope for an earlier game, I guess. 8:30.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's usually a bit later on the Saturday, isn't it? The early tip. So yeah, 6 p.m. Sunday, and then probably let's go 8:30. I'm going to hedge my guess at 8:30. Okie
dokie. Well, the hashtag NBA in the UK poll, which we ran on Twitter this afternoon, 73% of people took the Raptors. Not a lot of love out there for the Sixers, and 63% of you took the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Celtics. So. Yes.
Both of those surprised me, given the
massive amount of Celtics fans there are on our Twitter feed.
Yeah, and just the prominence of Philly fans here as well. Like the London game 2 years ago was just insane.
It was. That was a great game, actually. Yeah, great atmosphere. Probably the best atmosphere we've had at a London game. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please do review us on iTunes and Stitcher or whatever it is you listen to us on these days. Please do check out the website, doubleclutch.uk. Follow us on Twitter at doubleclutchuk. Mr. Miller, is there anything you want to mention before we go?
Check out the latest Game of Zones.
Oh, yes. Check out Game of Zones as well. Remember that. It is good.
It's
all about the Raptors, just like this podcast has been.
It is.
Anyway, right. We'll catch you at some point next week, guys. Thank you for listening.